babes, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy. I am the host of the Be Real Babe Show, a spinoff of the Be Real Babe podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on this episode today. If you are watching as this launches, it is Wednesday. That means it's time for some internet insanity. And as promised last week, if you haven't tuned in to part 1 of the first 7 days of the Diddy case, go check that out. It is posted from last week, and today we're going to jump into day 2 and majority of the time talking about Cassie's testimonies and what kind of happened around that, and some interesting pieces that I wanted to talk about and some corrections I want to make from last episode. Oh my gosh, you guys, there's so much about this. This trial is so overwhelming with information, but I'm going to try my best in this episode to wrap up week 2. So if you're interested in hearing my opinion, what I found on the internet that is insane about this case, stick around and we'll jump right in. Okay, babes. Okay, hopefully you watched the first episode. If not, just to catch up, we basically went over the defense attorneys and kind of looked into them a little bit, and then we went through jury selection and who's kind of the jury for this case, and we just kind of set the tone. The first 7 days was jury selection, and then I also by accident leaked into the following week when I reported on the first witness testimonies, and we talked about there was a male stripper, which I have to correct myself. I thought that was the Trump hotel shooter. It is not, so apologies. That was an entirely different. Guys, I didn't know how many strippers and escorts were involved in this situation. I didn't realize, as I've been obviously listening over the last week of all these different videos and different opinions of what's happened in court, I didn't know there was that many. So apologies, I got those mixed up. We'll be talking about the Trump hotel shooter today, actually. But the first one, we talked about a stripper that had witnessed some behavior that was a part of the freak-offs. And then we also talked about a security guard that was a part of the incident at the Intercontinental Hotel, I believe it was called. And he was on the witness stand. Those two were the first witnesses. And that was on the Monday. And now we're going to go to Tuesday, where Cassie takes the stand, and we're going to go through that. So correction. I didn't realize how many people were involved. And I honestly didn't even understand really truly what the freak-offs were or what was going on in the last little bit, trying to listen to all different angles of people that are there, people that are analyzing it, and then just coming to you guys with some articles to back up and adding my opinions of what the second week was like. Like I said, all 4 days were essentially all about Cassie, and then we're going to sidebar a little bit to one of the, like I said, the Trump hotel shooter. We're going to just dive off a little bit and go visit that. So I'm going to jump back and forth to 2 articles here. But let's start with on the 13th. And I didn't realize what she had went through, and I'm gonna give huge credit to Rotten Mango because she is there with her some reporters, and she is recounting the whole thing, going through the transcript. Unreal. If you guys obviously have time, go and watch that, but this is just kind of being like a Cole's notes of the situation, but she's doing hour deep dives of all of this. Definitely go recommend, because then you really get this picture, because it is a federal RICO case. There is no, and I don't know much about American court, so apologies. I don't know if that's just because it's federal or because I don't know if RICO is just federal. Either way, no audio, no video, and pretty much relying on the reporters that are coming out. So this is just my opinion on a lot of things, and just going off of what I'm seeing here. So let's jump right in. What was the other thing that I feel like I got wrong? Oh, right. Sorry. So there's 2 things that I said last episode that aren't correct for this episode. I said that I was going to jump into the prosecution and learn a little bit more about them, because we learned a little bit more about the defense lawyers. You guys, it's like pulling teeth. Like, there's nothing besides their LinkedIn. I really couldn't personally find it. Maybe that's my algorithm. I'm not sure. So we're not going to be talking about the prosecution today, because the only articles that we're pulling out were just essentially saying that they were an all-white women lawyers and they were prosecutors, and there wasn't, besides relating to this case, there wasn't much that I could find. So you guys let me know if you know anywhere I could look into them a little bit more. So today we'll not be having that focus. So apologies. Those were the 2 lies, 2 misinformations. YouTube, don't sue me. Okay, so Diddy's freak-offs could last 4 days, Cassie. So May 13th, 2025. On Tuesday, Ventura, who is close to having her 3rd child, took the stand in Combs' trial. She testified that sex parties that Combs would allegedly throw, called freak-offs, could last up to 4 days. Ventura told the jury the freak-offs became a job. She also claimed that they typically lasted 36 to 48 hours and will require frequent breaks due to drug use, alcohol use, and dehydration. Ventura allegedly participated in these parties for around a decade, with her last one around 2017 or 2018. She testified by the end of her participation, they were happening weekly. So let's jump in a little bit more to like their relationship. Like, I know a lot of people, and again, reminding in my mind and always having to constantly remember, is that the defense isn't saying that he didn't do these things. What they're saying is that this is domestic violence. This is weird sexual kink type situation. This is between them. This isn't a whole RICO case where, you know, there's actual like, so, okay, I pulled up what RICO is because as a Canadian, I don't know that we even have this here, but I just wanted to make sure in the US what that is. So what is a RICO case in the US? So the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, RICO, of 1970 seeks to strengthen the legal tools in evidence gathering by establishing new penal prohibitions and providing enhanced sanctions on new remedies for dealing with unlawful activities that engage in organized crime. So what is the most famous RICO case? One of the most prominent RICO case examples involves the notorious head of the Gambino family, John Gotti. Gotti was indicted in 1990 under the RICO violations, including murder, obstruction of justice, loan sharking, and other crimes. He was sentenced to life in prison and dying in 2002. So I believe that's the mafia, if I'm hopefully right. So essentially, again, not a criminal girly, not a law girly. I think from my understanding is essentially just saying like, not only like, I think you have to get them on two different charges, and there's certain charges that you have to get on to be able to run a RICO case where it's like federally, like he was racketeering, he was attempting to sex traffic, I believe some of them were. So I think once you add those all out and it shows that you use your enterprise and your power to continue coercing people into these types of situations, I believe that's, I think, the idea of what they're, and again, please correct me, but I think that's the idea. It's not, because Cassie already won her case, and we'll talk about that in a second. It's about the government going after him federally because he is a part of, they're saying, a crime unit and a gang, and all of these different people, there's multiple people that are being involved in corroborating and making this all happen, like a crime ring, essentially. Not necessarily always have to do with money and extortion and making money. It could be like what we're seeing, like she was brought all over the place doing these things, and it turned into a job for her. That was one thing that I heard through some of the videos, is that, you know, she was really trying to push her music career, but the time she was focused on doing this as a job and setting these freak-offs up, and understanding that, like, she was saying that, I guess, allegedly, this is just me paraphrasing all of these things in my understanding, okay? So it sounded like what was happening is that he would want her to arrange a freak off, and she was 19 when they started talking, getting into her career, and I believe it was 22 when she had her first freak off, so maybe like just at the end of 19 and then at the beginning of 22, I believe, she had her first freak off. And what that meant was that herself, she would hire another male or an escort or a dancer or whatever it was to be involved, and he as in Combs would be sitting in the corner, Diddy would be watching and essentially narrating what was going to happen. So she said it would be like a slow progression, like, so they would start where and she said this was really awkward to talk about, and like, that's what I'm saying, she's so fucking brave going through this, but essentially it would start off with them like self-pleasuring and then verbally describing what was happening to her and to her partner, and Diddy would essentially like lead them through, like be the director of the next part. So it would be about them like hooking up and, you know, then doing things orally, and then it would turn into sex, and then it would, you know, he would decide even where Buddy would finish on her, or if they do that together. There was things where they got really brutal, where they would like urinate and on her and stuff like that. And obviously this isn't something she wanted to do, and I know a lot of people are questioning that, and that's what the prosecution is kind of alluding to, is like, you were enjoying this, and she was just like, well, I was in love and I just really didn't know, and that she didn't want to shame him for his kinks, right? And she just really wanted to spend time with him and connect to him because she was so in love, and to do that she had to do all these things. So it was just a perfect storm of all these different reasons why, you know, she got trapped into that. But I didn't really realize when they're saying freak offs, I didn't really understand what that meant. And I guess sometimes that would maybe involve them going to different like sex, what do you call them? Like sex clubs, and that happening with people there. It could be her arranging things in different hotels. She said that they use lots of lube, like saying like those big bottles, like upwards to like 10 bottles, because he was just, when they say they literally obsessed with lube, like he was literally obsessed. There was tons of it. So that wasn't a joke. That's not even like, yeah, I know people are memeing it, but allegedly all the time, whether that was him putting it on them, whichever. But it sounded like a lot of the times he was sitting in the corner and just watching and directing what was happening, essentially live porn. That's what I kind of attribute to. It's like a play and a live porn that he's directing and telling them. And so she said a lot of the times she would try to like progress it because she knew the different steps, and she was trying to like just get it over with, because then after, the two of them would usually go and spend their time, just the two of them, and do other things. Again, go read the transcripts, go watch like Rotten Mango or Law and Crime and all of those places that are in detail delivering this stuff. But just all of those things, she was just looking for that time with him, right? Not the whole part. So she had to do all of those things. And yeah, she said it that eventually turned into a job. So again, like I didn't know what that meant. And so that, when they're saying freak offs, I was like, was this like big orgies or whatever it is? And it sounded like it was more maybe intimate things, and there maybe have been people, but like I think people are getting confused of like the white parties and all that, and all those people that were involved versus these freak offs. So like the freak offs weren't like everyone, from my understanding, having these big orgies. It was just like, this is what they did. And then they also had big parties and all those things. Now, did they maybe have people from the white parties that they brought into the mix for their freak offs? I'm sure. Like, I'm not doubting that there wasn't intertwined, but it was like everybody that was released on the Diddy list, and it was like all these people are airing these freak offs. That doesn't necessarily mean just because they went to that they had anything to do with that part of it. That being said, a lot of people are coming out saying like it was pretty obvious the abuse that he was putting towards. Like a lot of people did know, and they just didn't know what to say because they feared for their lives, and that's what they're kind of going through, right? So from my understanding is trying to paint a picture that it wasn't just Cassie and domestic violence. He was doing this. He had his assistants doing stuff for him, whether that was like getting the rooms ready or, you know, helping people pay people off to eliminate video security stuff, allegedly, all these things, right? Like he's still innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. But, you know, that's what they're trying to build up, is like he used people in his business, in his enterprise as a music mogul to get all these things and use his power to traffic these women and men, I guess, too. I guess you say, I can't just say it's women from what I know, just women right now, to do what he wanted. And then he had blackmail on them, just like Epstein, right? So same kind of idea. So hopefully that paints a little bit of a picture, but let's go through this. So on the first day of the stand, Miss Ventura began by taking prosecutors through the start of her tumultuous relationship with Mr. Combs, who she met when she was just 19 years old as an aspiring musician. Mr. Combs, 17 years her senior, signed her onto his record label. The romantic relationship began soon after, when Miss Ventura fell in love with the larger-than-life musician and entrepreneur, she said. But it was not long before she noticed a different side to him, Miss Ventura testified, at times wiping the tears from her eyes. Mr. Combs, she said, wanted to control every aspect of her life. He paid for her rent, her car, her phone, sometimes taking the items away to punish her when he was upset, she said. Eventually, the relationship turned violent. She testified about the time when he attacked her because she was sleeping, slashing her eyebrows as he threw her onto the corner of the bed as two friends tried to stop him. The court was shown a photo of the gash that Miss Ventura said Coombs hired a plastic surgeon to fix secretly. There was another time at a party where he kicked her head in and she cowered behind the toilet in the bathroom stall, she said. While jurors remained concentrated on her testimony and the evidence, betraying little emotion, some in the courtroom wiped away tears or looked away from the graphic photos and videos, including the viral video of Mr. Combs beating and dragging Miss Ventura in the hallway of the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles in 2006. Published by CNN last year, the video has been viewed by millions, including many of the jurors before they were seated in the trial. That was one of the questions that they had for them. And Miss Ventura, who was forced to rewatch the incident of abuse several times this week. So keep in mind, too, that this was like a job for her, too, right? Like she had to go through all of this stuff and relive all of this, relive the beatings, because she already went through her own case. So back in 2023, Cassie settled a lawsuit with Diddy for $20 million. Cassie told jurors the second day of her testimony that she settled a lawsuit in 2023 against Diddy for $20 million. The lawsuit, in which Ventura claimed that Combs raped and abused her for years, was filed in November 2023. It was resolved the next day. When asked why she testified against Combs, she said that she could no longer carry the shame of the abuse she reportedly suffered. I can't carry the shame of the guilt, she said Wednesday. So she's already, and that's why I think some people that, you know, don't have time are catching the headlines and just like trying to understand where this lies, where it's like Cassie, she's already won in a settlement outside of court for $20 million with Diddy. And she said that day, like there was a question, I can't remember who asked and said, like, would you give that $20 million back to never do these freak offs? And she said, absolutely. Like, those weren't things that I wanted to do, even though the prosecution is trying to build that. Look at all these things that you're saying through text message. You're saying that you love him, that you wanted to do them. You were kind of initiating them. And she's saying that the presentation of that in court is kind of misguided because there's all of this pressure behind that. And that's just some of the things that she said to keep him happy, to make sure that, you know, she kept her life. He was paying for everything, right? So I think the defense, you know, I think in the first few days, people weren't sure that they were going to be able to build this case. But as people are coming in, more people are corroborating. I think at the end of the day, a lot of people are also probably going to be at risk, that not these big celebrities that they're talking about. I'm talking to people in his everyday lives, like possibly assistants, possibly other musicians, possibly bodyguards, possibly security, people that he paid off could be implicated in this, and they could be, you know, facing decent charges too. So I think as they're seeing more people come out, more people are not bailing, but coming in and saying, yeah, this is corroborating stories. And I think we're going to see that more and more as the weeks progress here. Again, I know I'm about a week behind just posting this to what's happening live, but I just always like to wait a little bit just to see what else is coming out. So keeping in mind that Cassie did win her settlement, so she had to go through, you know, through the beginning of that. Luckily, she didn't have to take this to court, but now she is showing up as a witness for the federal government to explain, okay, yes, this is what I experienced. I didn't get my day in court to talk about it, and I'm kind of giving testimony to everything. And one of the things that it sounded like is that she was trying to be very candid and honest and being like, I don't necessarily know why I did maybe some of those things, but a lot of it had to do with, I loved him. And they're saying that she got all this money and she got all those things, and that then negates the beating. I'm not quite understanding where they're going with that, of being like, well, you made lots of money, and people in the comments like, yeah, okay, she was trapped. So again, like, we know abuse victims do a lot of things, but all of a sudden now Cassie is evil and she was doing this for money. What are you talking about? There's clearly lots of evidence showing that she was beat, that she was abused, that she was being manipulated. So I don't even know how I mean, defense has got to do their job. I understand, because, you know, and the jury also, this is on them. These are just my opinions, but yeah, so Cassie wins hers. This is her now testifying for a couple days with the prosecutors, and then I believe then the defense has their cross-examination where they're going to, you know, quote unquote, try and poke holes in everything that she's saying. So feel awful for this woman that she has to continue going through this stuff and reliving this as she's fucking 8 months pregnant, and her husband has to sit there and listen to it too as well. And it sounds like through a lot of this part, Diddy's daughters and stuff left, which I think I get it, I understand, but at the same time, if you can't face it, like, I don't know. Anyways, it's not my dad, so not really for me to say, I guess. Miss Ventura testified that the hotel incident took place after she tried to leave a freak-off, a sexual encounter in which the couple would hire male escorts to have sex with Miss Ventura while Mr. Combs watched and recorded from the corner. Miss Ventura said that the rapper introduced her to freak-offs around a year into their relationship, and at first she did it to make him happy. But over time, the encounters humiliated her, she said. They would sometimes last as long as 4 days and would require Miss Ventura to take countless drugs to stay awake, she said. She endured injuries like painful urinary tract infections and once even blacked out, waking up in the shower, she said. It made me feel worthless, she told the court. Freak-offs became a job where there were no space to do anything else but to recover and just try to feel normal again. So that's like when it started. Like I said, it sounds like he was literally directing it. And as I've said before on the podcast, sometimes when it comes to like porn and these really crazy sex addictions, especially when you're this rich and powerful, like you just really start pushing lines and you really stop looking at people as humans and you start seeing them as objects, and things are going to get worse and worse and worse. Obviously, he didn't just start with like urinating on her. That obviously started happening over time. And like she said, you're just in the moment. You don't know what you're doing, and you're also drugged up. Right? So they would be doing, I think it was ecstasy and Molly and different variations of that, where like people were saying that when they did this drugs, like other people that experienced it, like they just were a whole different other person. Right? So, you know, they're on these drugs, they're drinking, they're doing all these things. And at first it sounded like, yeah, they were probably just doing stuff, the two of them going to do drugs, having all this like crazy wild sex, and maybe, you know, bringing somebody into it. Like that connection was established with the two of them. And then all of a sudden they started, like bringing people in, and it became more and more. And it sounds like it became more and more about him watching her connect with other men and all those things, and versus them having the connection. And they got that after. So for her to get that, she had to go through this. And she said it sounded like it was pretty fucked up, because she knew she was doing something wrong that made her feel wrong, but he was extremely happy with her. And reminder, she's very young too. She's 19, 20 when this starts happening. Then also keep in mind, prolonged drug and alcohol abuse, not great, not good for mental health. All the sexual abuse she would have had to go through. And it sounded like there was different scenes and sessions. So it was like there could be a couple of different escorts coming in and a couple different sessions happening. And a session would be like when the guy finished. So they would go through a session, the guy would finish, and maybe she would have a little time to recuperate, but then the next guy would be ready for his session, and she would just kind of like be passed around, and he would just be directing through this whole thing. Like, oh my gosh, like I truly did not know how bad this was, you guys. And it just, like, when people are saying it's disgusting, you're like, yeah, it's disgusting, but it was fucking disgusting. And it sounds like they had to pay always thousands of dollars in these hotel rooms, because it was just like tons and tons of lube. This is going to sound gross, but it sounds like there was lots of like candles and stuff that had to be lit because of the different smells, right? Like there was lots, like he liked it really hot in there allegedly. So there'd be like a body odor, and then you just got the smell of sex. And then you've got like, it sounded like there was like blood sometimes, and like urination, and like all this different baby oil and lube, and like closed quarters and drugs. And like when you're drinking and drugs and your sweat smells different, like it sounds like she's a germaphobe. I would imagine that was bred in these circumstances, and a decade of doing this, you guys. It just makes me feel so absolutely terrible that it just progressed to this point. The couple would go to have hundreds of freak-offs, Miss Ventura estimated. After years of temporary breakups, some fueled Mr. Combs' affairs, Miss Ventura ended her relationship with Mr. Combs for good in 2018, the same year she alleged the rapper raped her in her home as she cried. Miss Ventura went on to date and marry her personal trainer, Alex Fine, with whom she has 2 children, but the trauma of her relationships has stayed with her. Fuck, no doubt. Through tears, Miss Ventura told the court of a time 2 years ago when she considered taking her own life when traumatic flashbacks of her time with Mr. Combs became too much to handle. Her husband helped seek therapy to recover, she said. It sounds like he wasn't then going to be able to control her anymore, and then always threatening to release videos. And again, this is where I think he's got that Epstein vibe. And if you look at pictures, you see pictures of his house, it's like he's got this like whole like video system going up. It is absolutely crazy, this surveillance. So it's like, it sounds like he recorded some stuff, she had some stuff, he had some stuff. Like, it's just absolutely insane operation he had going on there. So I guess as they were going through the trial, one part is that there was pictures that were pulled up, and she was identifying who these different escorts were. And then they came up to one picture that corroborated the Trump's hotel shooter's story. And we're going to go to that in a second, but I just wanted to finish up a little bit more about Cassie's statement. And then we'll jump to the fellow that was claiming, years ago that he was paid by Diddy as a sex slave, and he was also going on a bipolar rant. So some stuff was very true, but he's also shooting up the Trump Tower. So we'll end with that, that's kind of like in the middle, but either way. So Cassie was forced to read explicit messages with Diddy during the trial. So on May 15th, 2015, on Thursday, Ventura was pressed to read explicit messages between her and Combs out loud in court. This included texts that showed her expressing desire for the drug-fueled group sex that she previously said left her traumatized, according to the Associated Press. The messages were the focus of the 4th day of testimony, with defense attorney Hannah Estevao reading what Combs' text said. Ventura had to recite her own messages about what she allegedly wanted to do during these freak-offs. One message exchange from August 2009 showed that Combs asked Ventura when she wanted the next encounter to be, and she replied, "I'm always ready to freak off." 2 days after that, she allegedly sent him an illicit message that Combs replied to in eager anticipation. She then responded, "Me too. I just want it to be comfortable." However, later that year, Ventura sent messages to Combs about the state of their relationship, saying that she needed more from him than just sex. Estevao also noted a text from July 2013 where Ventura wrote Combs, "Wish we could have freaked off before you left." In 2017, Cassie reportedly wrote, "I love our freak-offs when we both want it." On the stand, Ventura explained that saying loving FOs were just words at that point. She also complained during the trial that jurors weren't hearing the full context of the text messages. She said, "There's a lot we skipped over." And that's what I agree with too, right? It's not really fair to her because they're just pulling stuff out of context to make that. But when you build a whole entire case of all of these things, and the point where it's like, Freak Off sounded like it just started between like maybe her and one other person and maybe just the two of them, and was just like sexually, and I'm not gonna yuck people's yums when there's abuse that comes in. Obviously that's fucking disgusting, but at the time it sounded like maybe they're just freaky people, and even having group sex, like I don't think, again, that's illegal, but I think doing things against her will, like directing everything, like maybe she liked it when they were both, when she's saying they both wanted it when it was just free, when maybe he wasn't directing every little single piece and it became an act, it became a job, versus just, you know, being free to sexually have fun and quote unquote freak off, right? Like it sounds like there was two different things, and depending on what he wanted is what they got. And that then turns a dynamic because he has that power control over her of her entire life, right? So like very hard for people to quote unquote bite the hand that feeds. Like it's a very unhealthy, very shitty situation for this poor fucking woman. At the same time, she is 9 months pregnant. So Cassie takes a witness stand while 9 months pregnant. On Friday, Combs' defense team told the judge that their questioning of Ventura might not finish until the end of the day. This would mean that prosecutors would need to use Monday to ask her to follow up the follow-up questions. The judge said that both sides had initially agreed that Ventura would be finished testifying by the end of the week. However, the defense said the prosecution interviewed 2 witnesses ahead of Ventura, which caused a delay in her taking the stand. That's why this is a sword that I must fall on, Mark Agnifilo, one of the Combs lawyers, told the judge. He also said that they seemed strategic that the prosecution called 2 witnesses before Cassie's testimony. The judge eventually told Combs' team to finish their questionings of Ventura on Friday morning to leave time for prosecution to ask their questions. By Friday afternoon, Ventura's testimony had concluded. Her attorney, Douglas Wigder, released a statement to reporters. "This week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from the abuse and fear," it read in part. So speaking on her half. So that absolute poor fucking woman. But as she was going through this and the pictures came up, just wanted to kind of go over this last one because I had said before that people thought this man was crazy, and I'm not saying he's not crazy, but while they were going through pictures, she was going through and she identified Jonathan Audie, who alleged opened fire at President Donald Trump's Florida resort and golf course, claimed in a video interrogation that he had been a sex slave for Diddy and Cassie. Now go Google this, you guys. Just go Google his name. You'll see the interview and you'll see where it's just like, it's a fucking roller coaster. But he claimed that he had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would masturbate and tell me what to do to Cassie. And I had like 15 encounters. I heard a lot of business. I was like a sex slave for them. That's what I was. Audie also claimed he settled a claim with Combs and turned over a video of his time with Combs and Ventura as part of the settlement. Audie claimed that Combs was scared I would expose him. "My settlement put me in a box. Basically, I couldn't talk because I was going to be sued. They kept following me," Audie said. He also told News Nation he met Combs after the rapper called an agency that Audie worked for and requested a show. Audie's comments to News Nation were similar to those he told police in 2018. "I get dressed and I'm in a police officer's costume. I strip down and then, they offer me some more money to do extra stuff." And again, he went on a completely bipolar rant when he got caught because, again, I believe I can't remember where this was. So May 2018, Jonathan Audie opened fire at Florida resort and golf course owned by President Donald Trump's National Doral Miami Resort. And this was when Trump was in presidency, I think 2 years into his presidency. Audie, who later said that he was in the middle of a bipolar episode, fired his gun, allegedly shooting at police officers before being shot in the leg and arrested. The Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office filed charges against Audie for attempted felony murder of law enforcement officers, armed burglary, and armed grand theft. In 2018, authorities discounted most of what Audie told them. His ramblings about having any connection to Combs seemed far-fetched, but Audie's allegations against Combs are strikingly similar to the testimony offered by Ventura in court on Tuesday. News Nation reached out to Audie to talk to him about his claims and why he had agreed to talk now about his relationship with Combs and Ventura. He told News Nation that he felt bad because I got along well with Cassie and I think she is a decent person. And I had a suspicion that she was in a situation that she was in, but I wasn't sure. And now I understand what's going on in her life and what was happening. And him beating her up in the hotel shows me the type of individual he is. And everything that happened to me is true and correct and in line with his personality. He told News Nation he initially met Combs after the rapper producer called an agency that he worked for and requested a show. Audie comments to News Nation, we were similar to those he told police in 2018 interrogation. So he was paid about $800 a session. Again, same kind of thing. And obviously he went crazy, but everyone was just kind of like, what the fuck? You're crazy. You're going crazy. Obviously you're shooting up the resort and all that kind of stuff. So you're la loca. But yeah, turns out he is probably crazy for 95% of what he was talking about. I don't know. That's just alleged, but he was very accurate in being a quote unquote sex slave because it sounded like a lot of them were. And it seems to be this theme where he likes them to dress up as cops. That's two now. That's two different ones that have come forward saying that he likes cops. He likes baby oil. He likes to be in control. And it sounds like he threatens people with allegedly with things. That's what they're trying to build the case. So far in the first week of testimonies, like I said at the very beginning, those two witness cases that the defense was saying was strange that they brought on. I think because they're trying to paint the picture. They didn't just want to bring Cassie in. It was just like painting a picture that there's other people in the world. And here is a now police officer, but was security guard at the time. And here's a male stripper to corroborate what Cassie was going to bring. And she had a very raw 4 days, 8 months pregnant, about to pop. Unreal that this woman went through all of this, not for her own personal gain. This gets her literally nothing. She wins no money, no nothing. This is just to help paint a picture and get Diddy on this RICO case. And then next week, it sounds like there's going to be more like assistants, proteges, those type of situations to loop around and validate and corroborate to validate what Ventura was saying in her experience and what other people that were validating in her life as well, and all the possibly extortions and things like that, and more of that gets deeper as we get into next week. So next week I will report on that. We'll go into week 3 and we'll keep going here with the best that I can. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This is so fucking crazy. I can't believe we're actually here, and I just hearts and prayers and healing to everybody that has ever been affected by this individual. And I hate reporting on it, but I'm glad this is coming to light. Don't forget, guys, if you made it all the way to this end of this video, thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, comment for engagement if you can. I really appreciate you listening. Keeping in mind that there's one more month of this show, and then I'm going to take a break while the podcast goes on, and then I'll be back in August, but you still have me for the rest of June. Don't forget to tune in to last week's episode to catch the first 7 days, and then keep those notifications on so when the third one drops next week, you'll be able to tune right in. Thanks again, guys. Until next episode. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, bye.